U.S. energy interests are a little bit concerned about what happens south of the border with this big liberal victory on the part of Andres Lopez Obrador. He won big, and he got the entire government to go his way as the complete run of the table, a sweeping liberal victory that has some wondering whether we've got a version of a Hugo Chavez, the former Venezuelan strongman, right south of us in Mexico. That might be a bit extreme, but let's get the read for the Heritage Foundation Latin America Senior Policy Analyst, Ana Quintana. Ana, thank you for joining us. What do you make of this guy?
I mean, I think he's clearly a leftist. He's a populist. I mean, he's a very big nationalist. And I think, you know, if you scratch the surface, it's kind of like what you were talking about before. You scratch the surface, his communist roots are there. But I think, you know, this is 2018, this is to Mexico in 2018. And there are enough factors that will kind of keep him in place that he won't go off the deep end.
You always hope that's the case. Now, of course, the rogues gallery of a lot of these Chavez types, most of them out of power now, have been praising his victory and saying it's a sign of things to come for the region. What do you think?
I think, look, the communism has lost the 21st century war of ideas, right? And I think we clearly see the evidence, the case in point with Venezuela. I mean, the dire crisis that country is in has proven that communism and socialist economic policies simply do not work. And AMLO has seen that the Mexican people will elect out parties that are not serving their interests. We clearly saw with the decimation of the traditional two-party system. And now AMLO, like you mentioned, has the presidency. His movement also, unfortunately, has control of the Congress as well. So I think, you know, elections are going to happen again in 6 years, and if he doesn't prove his worth and he doesn't address the underlying issues that got him elected, Mexicans are going to vote his movement out.
That's interesting, and it might be a response to the corruption of the government that was overtaken here, to your point. But I'm wondering what he would do and how he would get along with a Donald Trump. Some have said that it kills the NAFTA agreement or reworked. Others have argued just the opposite. It might hasten one. What do you think?
I think there are significant parallels between AMLO and President Trump, right? Both were essentially elected by constituencies who have felt disenfranchised by the political and economic elite, and both are serving the interests of their respective countries. And really, there's very few things that are more in the U.S.'s interest or more in Mexico's interest to have warm relations with a country that's on their opposite side of the border. I would imagine AMLO would recognize how much of a priority immigration is, for example, and would temper back his rhetoric of allowing Central American migrants to flow northward. I would imagine that he would also temper his rhetoric against free trade and against NAFTA. And I would hope that an agreement can be reached that's going to benefit both of the leaders.
We should preface this, and you know this stuff so well, that AMLO is just short for Andres Lopez Obrador, right? I mean, he goes by that, right?
Yes, yes.
So when he takes over officially, and he has talked very much about corporate interests that seem to have eclipsed the average Mexican citizens' interests, what is he saying? What is he telegraphing?
He's specifically telegraphing the rampant corruption that exists in the country, particularly within the public sector. I mean, Mexico currently right now has 14 current and former governors either under investigation or is sitting inside of prisons. One governor who stole $2 billion, who embezzled $2 billion in public money. So that's the corruption that he's talking about. That public sector corruption colluding with the private sector and with criminal interests, and that's what I would imagine, is trying to root out. We should be wary, though, to make sure that his anti-corruption campaign is not politically targeting just one particular, you know, either political opponents, because then that would be dangerous.
Yeah. So by your rationale here, it's not as if this shows a socialist or liberal wave south of the border, because in Colombia the conservative candidate was elected. There is no way to say this is, you know, a carbon copy of one sort of a left-wing leader after another.
No, it's simply not. And for any left wing, the left right now in Latin America is claiming that there's a resurgence of the left simply because the left is dying. I mean, we've seen a great regression and kind of a rollback of the pink tide. You have a conservative elected in Colombia. You have another conservative elected in Chile as well. These were two countries where the left had a significant stronghold over the past few years, and I anticipate that to continue being the case. I mean, we're in El Salvador, that is controlled by the left, is having elections next year. I think the Conservative Party is going to win again. So I think we're seeing conservatives in the region gain momentum.
Boy, Ana, you know your stuff. You know that? I'm very impressed. I learned quite a bit. Ana, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
We'll see how it all sorts out. In the meantime,